My name is Ann Rockwell. I'm here with another Poets Talk Poetry for Saratoga Springs Public Library, in which I invite a guest poet to read a poem they like or admire or love by another poet, and then one of their own poems. And we will discuss both poems. And today I have with me Elizabeth Twiddy, whose poetry has been featured on the National Public Radio show, The Writer's Almanac. Among other distinctions, she has won the Joyce Carol Oates Award, the National Dear You Poetry Contest, and the Gold Medal for Poetry from the E-Lit Book Awards. Her work has appeared widely in such journals as Barrow Street, Pool, the Alembic, Redactions, and the Comstock Review. Her two current collections are the chapbook Zoo Animals in the Rain and her book Love Noise. In addition to being a poet, Ms. Twiddy is a librettist who, with her husband, Edward Ryszalski, has created choral works. In a former incarnation, Elizabeth worked as a research scientist in biochemistry. Currently, she is at work on a collection of essays, along with further poetry and a children's book. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
So great to have you. And so today you are going to read a poem by Anna Swir, a Polish poet who's no longer with us. I think she was of the generation of Czeslaw Milosz, who translated this poem. And the name of the poem is I Talk to My Body. And I'll let you tell me why you might have chose this poem and anything you'd like to share about it. And then go ahead and read it.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to be here, and so nice to be in the context of a public library. So that's lovely. And I'll just briefly say, Marianne and I were workshop mates together at Syracuse University's creative writing program. So we did an MFA together in creative writing, and we were workshop mates. So it's nice to be together in this way now. So yes, I chose a poem by Anna Swir. This is the book, Talking to My Body by Anna Swir. I feel drawn again and again to Anna Swir's work. I find myself turning again and again to this book in particular. She, as you said, is a Polish poet. She was born in 1909. She died in 1984. And she lived through World War II. And she served as a military nurse in a makeshift hospital during the Warsaw Uprising. She grew up in abject poverty, was starving as a child, expected to be executed for a full hour during this Warsaw Uprising. So this is a woman who has endured suffering on a level that most of us have not, despite all of our sufferings and all of our losses and all of our pains. Most of us have not suffered quite in the way that Anna Swir has suffered. And so I find myself turning to poets like Anna Swir right now, during this pandemic, during this climate crisis, during this catastrophe in Afghanistan, and all the other myriad catastrophes we find ourselves facing, because I find strength and solace in her work and in her words. And in particular, I think because she is a woman, and because she is so confident, you can hear her confidence. Poem after poem is just full of a voice of confidence and feminism and celebration of the body. I think that's something that women really need. I think there's never going to be a time when women are not going to need to hear this kind of voice. Maybe 10,000 years from now, we'll finally reach gender equity. I don't know. But until then, we're going to need voices like Anna Swir's. And so would you like for me to go ahead and read the poem?
Yes, and would you like me to share the poem on the screen, and we'll still see your face that way? But if you give me a moment, I can pull up the poem.
Okay, so this is again from the book Talking to My Body. I talk to my body. My body, you are an animal whose appropriate behavior is concentration and discipline, an effort of an athlete, of a saint, and of a yogi. Well trained, you may become for me a gate through which I will leave myself, and a gate through which I will enter myself. A plumb line to the center of the earth, and a cosmic ship to Jupiter. My body, you are an animal for whom ambition is right. Splendid possibilities are open to us.
Lovely.
It's straightforward, it's accessible, and it manages to say so much at the same time that is mysterious.
Agreed.
I value, in poems is the mysterious and the clear sort of simultaneously.
Yes.
I love that she is splicing together the animal and the spirit without any reliance on religion. And again in this book, if you read her poems, you'll see she rejects religious possibility. She is not interested in organized religion, but she is always in conversation with herself about the spirit.
And Beth, may I just interject that where I found the poem online in order to pull it up was at a website that had a collection of spiritual poetry that you could kind of like a repository of spiritual poetry. So that's just interesting what you're saying, because she was not a religious person.
Wonderful. I love that she appears in that context. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to say about this poem, and like most poems that are really great poems, there's a lot to say. But for me,
what about the word appropriate? Appropriate. You're an animal whose appropriate behavior. I underlined that because isn't that contradictory? An animal being appropriate.
Yeah, right. It's like you're disciplining something that may not be possible to be disciplined. I just think she does a beautiful job of finding a way to splice those two ideas together. I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry, but I think it's interesting that I'll just go if that's okay.
Sure.
Well-trained. So well-trained, you may become for me a gate, and then she repeats that concept of the body as a gate. And she's certainly not ignoring female physiology, or she's really writing the body, as some feminist scholars have charged women to do, write their own bodies. Don't leave it to men to write their story. But the body as a gate, like a starting place, a threshold, an opening.
Right.
Yeah.
picking up on that, if I may, it reminded me of what I was saying earlier, which is she sees her body as her companion.
Mm-hmm.
And again in the poems, she is addressing her body as a separate being.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things you see in the poems is loneliness. And because she doesn't have any kind of religion to hold on to in the sort of suffering that she endures throughout her life, she only has her body. This is it. This is my one life. This is my one body. This is my companion.
And it truly is her temple.
Right.
In that way.
Right.
Her secular temple.
Yeah, right. I think it's interesting what you said about the word appropriate. I agree. It's like an unexpected word in the context of something that is seeking answers about the spirit. You don't expect to hear the word appropriate.
Right.
You expect to hear the word appropriate if you're in grade school and you're being disciplined for having done something wrong, or right.
Right. And women are supposed to act appropriately and sit appropriately. I mean, we're trained, right, as little girls.
Right.
Or one generation, previous generations at least have been.
Yeah.
And then the points of departure for the body. Can you talk about that in the second stanza?
Yeah, I don't you love that. So you spoke a little bit about that gate opening threshold idea. I just love that idea of, if you're well trained, if I can get you to, be disciplined and adhere to the concentration I'm asking of you, then, right, you may become for me a gate through which I will leave myself and also enter myself. And I think my favorite part of the whole poem is a plumb line to the center of the earth and a cosmic ship to Jupiter, because you can see a gate. Like, you can picture any of our bodies, your own body, and see within your own body a line, like picture that straight line, plumb line, going straight down through the earth's crust, plummeting to the center of the earth, and then in the opposite direction, straight up, blasting off into outer space in the cosmic ship to Jupiter, which, contrary to what Jeff Bezos and others are doing now, I think is much more interesting. You
need a spaceship to access other realms.
Yes. Right. Skip the destruction of the planet Earth and skip the for millionaires and billionaires only part.
And isn't this someone who would know about what it feels like to be out of your body? If she had expected to be executed, she spent 1 hour facing execution, and then there was a stay of execution, apparently. And she was part of the French resistance. So this is someone who has seen death, who was a nurse in the war, who approached her own death and then was spared. So this is someone who knows about which she speaks, I guess. Yeah.
Right. And I love her insistence. I love that she comes back in the final stanza and repeats, "My body, you are an animal." Like, let me say it again. Like, I know I've just said you can achieve these things that don't seem possible to achieve, like getting to the center of the earth and getting to Jupiter through your own spirit. But let me repeat, you're an animal. Right? Like, let's not forget, this is where we're anchored. This is true. We're an animal.
The body is an anchor too. The body provides that anchor. Yeah.
Right. And that optimism. I love that hopeful tone at the end. For whom ambition is right.
And it's so, isn't that, it's an affirmation for, again, someone who's a woman who's writing the body. She's like giving her blessing for women to be ambitious. That can be one gloss on it, right?
Right. Right. And splendid possibilities are open to us is the way that she leaves us at the end of the poem. And the word us is the last word in the poem. Doesn't that feel inclusive?
Yes. So not
about me, it's about you, it's about all of us.
Yeah. Not solipsistic.
Right. Right. Would you mind if I know that maybe a unexpected time to do this, but would you mind if I quickly read a couple of short paragraphs about her bio? Because it does help to underscore what we've just been talking about. These
are from the back of her book, isn't that right? Her book is called Talking to My Body.
Right. This is the book.
Which is ordered I just ordered it for the library.
Perfect. Everyone go and rent it. Borrow it. And then these are the words from the back cover. So you'll see when you get the book, this is what it says. So a poet should be as sensitive as an aching tooth, said Anna Swir, who lived from 1909 to 1984, one of Poland's most distinguished poets. So she is considered one of Poland's most distinguished poets, even though a lot of the people here in the United States haven't heard of her. One of the reasons we're talking about her today. Open in her feminism and eroticism, her poetry explores the life of the female body, from dread to delight, from the depths of agony during World War II to delirious sensual delights, and always with relentless honesty. A member of the resistance during the Nazi occupation and a military nurse in a makeshift hospital during the Warsaw Uprising, Swir once waited an hour, fully expecting to be executed. Mm-hmm. Affected deeply by her experience, she wrote a poetry which rejected the grand gesture of war in favor of a world cast in miniature, a world in which the body and individual survive. So,
thank you so much, Beth, for introducing us to Anna Swir's work. And I believe her name has been abbreviated somewhere along the line from a much longer Czech name.
I think so too, and I think you're right.
Yeah, I saw it somewhere, but yeah, so we can explore that during another Poets Talk Poetry. But we're going to move on now to your poem, "The Animal That Lives in Fire" by Elizabeth Twiddy.
Well, thank you for inviting me to share a poem of my own. I tried to find a poem of mine that I felt had some connection with I Talk to My Body, the poem we just talked about, by Anna Swir. So I'm going to read a poem from my book, Love Noise. This is the book.
Also found in our library, or soon to be found in our library.
Fantastic. The Animal That Lives in Fire. The animal that lives in fire is a shape I make out in the tile on the bathroom floor. Inside the strawberry, at the center of the earth, inside the first Cherokee, is the animal that lives in fire. Embedded in the pages of the book my lover reads is the animal that lives in fire. It looks out from the windows of our non-existence. It wipes the salt from its lips. Before us and after us, the animal that lives in fire.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
And may I bring it up on the screen?
Oh, sure.
right?
So this is published in my book, so I don't have, any trouble, it's all fine to share the text. It's humbling to read a poem of my own after reading Anna Swir's poem. Tough act.
I can start if you like, with
Sure.
my impressions. I feel as though the animal that lives in fire is, we all create our own mythologies in a way, don't we? Our own things that we worship, or believe in or put faith in, I suppose. And so that sort of is what the animal that lives in fire came across as to me, for you, or for the speaker of the poem. And just the power of the imagination struck me. And it's so kind of funny too. There's some humor to me in that this is the poem's coming alive in the context of the bathroom. the shape on the bathroom floor is making the speaker kind of imagine this animal that lives in fire, a place where the bathroom is where we tend to our bodies. So again, here's the body, and the body again is an animal. So that's just interesting. My impressions.
Well, thanks for sharing your impressions.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to talk about my own poems in analytical terms, but for me, the animal that lives in fire is the human being. And partly what I'm doing in this poem is anticipating climate catastrophe. And one of the things that has occurred to me is if you think about the four main elements that we tend to talk about, land or earth, air, water, and fire, living things exist in the air. They exist on the surface of the earth, on land, and they exist in water. But very few living things live and exist in fire. There are some, but very few and uncommonly so, smaller organisms and things in heat vents in the oceans, things like that. So I started thinking about, what about that animal that could live in fire if it were possible? And, thinking about the earth on fire, and sort of the looking out from the windows of our non-existence is meant to call up what feels inevitable and inexorable at some point in the human future.
Before us and after us, the animal that lives in fire.
Yeah, like the time of the dinosaurs or the Big Bang. And then who knows how it's going to happen, but it seems that at some point in the future, it will happen again.
Yeah. No, that was clear to me as well, that this animal will survive us all.
Yeah.
This creature.
The spirit or
whatever continues after our species.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that,
the way it appears things are going, right?
Right. And I'm hoping to convey this kind of ravenous desire, both with the word animal and with some of the behaviors, the lover, the image of the lover, the wiping of salt from its lips, this kind of this desirous, lusting, ravenous animal.
A will to survive.
Right.
Too.
Right. So I guess I see the connection. The word that really connected for me was the word animal. That was the big link for me in my way into thinking about The Animal That Lives in Fire and Anna Swir's poem, I Talk to My Body, that insistence that the human being and the human body is an animal. Mm-hmm. And then from there, what about that? And how do we survive? And do we survive?
Mm-hmm. Like coming to terms with the fact that, you know, we're part of the earth. We're beings of the earth. Again,
right.
The animals are our sisters and brothers.
Yeah, we're all connected rather than separate. Do you feel this way? I feel like so many of us human beings tend to think almost exclusively about human stuff, you know, our human dramas, what we look like, what other people look like, our relationships with other people. Oh, it's just human, you know, celebrity info.
Well, materialism rules.
Yeah. And
consumerism is a problem that when we put that above the concerns of the earth.
Right. And so I feel like because we're so human-centered, we tend to think of human stuff on one plane, mm-hmm. and all other living things on a separate plane. It's almost like every other type of living species or living thing on the planet Earth exists in a separate space from ours, and that's just not.
Or that it's there for our enjoyment. Like, oh, we can go hiking, we can travel, we can enjoy animals in the zoo. But that's out there. They're separate. We live in our houses. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like for me, the first point is the separation. It's like one plane and a separate plane in the human mind. Mm-hmm. And it's not reality, right? We are all mixed up.
We're all connected
on the surface of the earth. Exactly. Yeah. And if somebody goes extinct, guess what? It's pointing to our own extinction.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Well, on that note, let's go back to the last line of Anna Swir's poem, which is
that's a good idea.
Possibilities are open to us.
Possibilities
are open. The opportunity to change the way we are interacting with Mother Earth.
Right.
And
blended possibilities are open to us.
Yeah, yes. Let us close on that optimistic thought.
Okay.
And thank you very much for sharing your poetry with us today, and with Anna Swir's poetry as well.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary Ann.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.